Good evening, everyone. We're coming out of a closed session that ran a little bit late, and I apologize for the delay. But while we were in closed session, our meeting was called to order, so we can begin. We're going to start with our student representative reports.
Hi, my name is Annabelle Sue. I'm the high school representative for High School South. So to begin with, this past weekend, South had their spring musical performance, which was Guys and Dolls, and they had a spectacular 4 shows. Spring sports also began last week, and one of the highlights is that there were 102 boys who tried out for the boys volleyball team. So we are excited to see how the team does this season, as well as all the other spring sports. The juniors are currently on their Washington seminar trip in Washington, D.C., and they will return this weekend. Meanwhile, the seniors are getting ready for their Disney trip, where they will be departing tomorrow, or actually Thursday morning, and returning on Monday the 16th. Both students and parents had the Disney informational meeting on Monday. Finally, South Asian American Student Association, SASA, is busy putting together their final pieces for the annual SASA performance, which will be held on March 27th.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Broundorf, and I am a senior at High School North. 2 weekends ago, HSN put on an amazing Mary Poppins musical. Everyone was stunned by the incredible magic and acting that went on stage. We are also proud of the immense amount of work so many students put in to making this a great production. As the theater closes from one event, it will shortly be opened again on April 25th for our Tonight Show. Student Council has begun its preparations and has a final list of contestants for this year's show. We are so excited for what's in store. As busy as it is inside the walls of HSN, it is just as busy outside with spring sports beginning. Tryouts and final cuts are being made, and we're excited to see all the achievements that will be made this spring season.
Good evening. My name is Sonia Manloy, and I'm a senior at High School North. As the winter sports season ended, many of our athletes did very well. At the winter track meet of champions, the girls 4x800 got 3rd place and broke our school record. The freshman and sophomore classes hosted a Night in the Dark dance last Friday, which was a glow-in-the-dark dance that turned out to be a huge success. The juniors have been working very hard as their junior prom is coming up in the beginning of April. As the weather gets warmer, the junior and senior classes have become more excited for their upcoming class trips. The class of 2021 leaves for Washington Seminar next week, and the class of 2020 leaves for Disney as well. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for the reports, and have fun on your trip.
Thank you.
Dr. Adholt would like to say something, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I actually have 2 different comments I want to make. First one is with respect to a special award we're going to make this evening. The second one will be about the state of the district with respect to coronavirus and emergency preparedness. So I'm going to start with our recognition and our award this evening. You might notice that there's some of Plainsboro's finest in the audience, as well as Millstone River's administration. So I'd like to just welcome Gerard Dalton, Heather Shanklin, Aaron Falk, and representatives from the Plainsboro Police Department, including our chief and Sergeant McElrath, who oversees the program. Before we talk about the specific recognition this evening, bless you, I'm going to ask Mr. Earl to just talk and just frame an understanding of what Class 3 officers do, and a little bit about the program, just to make sure the audience and the representatives in the audience this evening are aware of the program.
Thank you, Dr. Adholt. We are in our 2nd year of implementation of Class 3 officers in our building. We're currently at capacity during the day shift. Our officers are there essentially for safety. That's their primary goal. But we emphasize becoming a part of the school community. And we are starting to see strong relationships that our officers are building with staff, students, and the community as they enter the school. So we're excited this evening to recognize one of our officers for outstanding work at Millstone River School. Our officers are often in visible in the building and outside the building. They're checking areas, they're reporting about safety issues and concerns. They're working diligently with parents. So they're trying to build strong relationships in the building while understanding that their primary focus is really about the security of the building in the event of a critical incident. So we're excited this evening to have Officer Martinez here and the staff from Plainsboro PD. Police Department.
At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Dalton and his administrative team, Ms. Shanklin and Ms. Falk, to the podium to just talk a little bit about the day of February 12th and the life-saving actions that Class 3 Officer Jay Martinez engaged in.
Good evening, everyone. So it's our distinct pleasure to be here this evening to speak about the great experience and skill of Officer Martinez and what he brings to our school and our community, to our students. To them, he's known as Officer J, and to us, he's known as Officer J every day. So about over a month ago, Officer J called me on the walkie-talkie. And it was one of those calls that you knew something was up. He arrived at my office to indicate that there was a serious concern about a parent who was visiting in our office. And he told me that the person's coloring did not appear to be healthy and that he had seen something in his eyes that just were not right. He wanted me to witness it. So we went out to see the person and immediately summoned our school nurse. We went on to speak to the person who was just trying to minimize the feeling that it was just something more minor. But Officer J pulled me aside and said, "Gerard, I know something else is up here. Something else is going on." So we continued to pursue things. We got the mother who was in the meeting in the building, and his perception and his persistence were absolutely correct. The father was immediately taken to the hospital, and we later learned that there were a series of cardiac issues going on in this person's life that necessitated surgery. So for that, we're thankful because Officer J's experience, his skills of observation, his communication continue to be valuable assets to our school. He observes, he asks questions, and he's persistent with a strong focus on safety. This isn't the first time he's done this. A week before this, he called me on the radio and said, "We have a student who's in distress and having trouble breathing. The parent wants to drive the child to the hospital. I don't think it's safe." The parent was alone. And when I saw the child and we realized how unsafe it was, he had his radio in his hand and he called for an ambulance. We didn't even have to jump to a telephone. He called for an ambulance. His ability to think quickly, call for swift action, has been a critical addition to the health and safety protocols at Millstone River School. After each drill, our team pulls together other people. After these real crisis situations, we debrief and we learn from them. I welcome his voice in the room. He brings questions that we wouldn't think of from a totally different perspective, and this has been an awesome experience at our school, and in this case, saved a life. So we thank the board for their support of this program, but tonight we thank Jay for everything he does for our community.
If I could welcome representatives from the Plainsboro Police Department as well as Officer Martinez to the podium, please.
Good evening. I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to present this award to Officer Martinez. Officer Martinez, if you could please come up. I'd like to read your life-saving award. The Plainsboro Township Life-Saving Award is issued to Class 3 Officer Jay Martinez for his prompt and alert observations on February 12, 2020 at Millstone River School. Officer Martinez observed a distressed male with skin discoloration and dilated pupils. He immediately identified these signs as a medical emergency and alerted the school administrators and nurse. It was later determined that the male was having cardiac complications which required emergency surgery. Officer Martinez's quick response, recognition of the medical emergency, and immediate actions resulted directly in the saving of the man's life. Excellent job.
Thank you, Chief.
I'd just like to thank Officer Jay for his hard work and his dedication. I can tell you that I recently attended a PTA meeting at Millstone River School where Officer Jay came and to just talk to parents and have a little chat and just get to know each other. And I was very moved to hear when Officer Jay talked about, the meeting was like in January, and he said that he, at Christmas time, had gotten so many thank you notes and presents from parents at Millstone River School that it took multiple trips to his car to bring everything home. So it's quite evident to me, even before hearing this story, how much he's appreciated at Millstone River School, and now to find out that he truly is a hero is really overwhelming. So thank you so, so much for everything that you do, have done, and will continue to do at Millstone River School.
Thank you so much, man. I would just like to take a brief opportunity, number one, just say good evening to everyone. My name is Jesus Martinez. The children call me Officer J. And I work at the most phenomenal school in this school district. I've never been in another school, and to be honest, the way I mentioned it to Sergeant McElrath, I have no desire to go to any other school. And it's, I tell you, it's a phenomenal experience on a daily basis to work for administrators such as Mr. Dalton. I would run through a brick wall for that gentleman, and I told you that, Marty. Mr. Shanklin and Dr. Folk. So on behalf of my wife, she couldn't be here this evening, my two beautiful boys, it's pretty cliche that officers will tell you, I was just doing my job. But to be honest with you, I love my job. I love those children, I love the faculty, and again, I just love being at Millstone River School. Thank you, Chief Tavener, Sergeant McElrath, and Officer Reichert. You guys have a phenomenal evening, and thank you again for this heartfelt move.
I wish I had a good transition from that presentation to coronavirus, but I will not even attempt it. So thank you again, officers, and thank you for being here in attendance. Today, the school district sent out yet another update with respect to state of emergency preparedness, with respect to coronavirus, and the pressing concerns within our state, within our nation, within our world. So just want to sort of step back and give a sense of sort of where we are with respect to New Jersey, with New Jersey Department of Education, with the laws and rules that we're governed by, and some of the steps that we're taking as a district. Prior to last Thursday, March 5th, school districts had no ability to enter into virtual learning or remote learning opportunities, e-learning. And from a perspective of workforce these days, that's hard to process, as we often can telecommute or we can conference call in from home. We have a home office. That is not the way public schools code has been written. And that's been evidenced time and time again, whether it's been efforts by Pascack Valley School District with virtual snow days, or whether it's been attempts to do things differently during Hurricane Irene or Hurricane Sandy. The idea of remote education has not been allowed under code. And we're governed by New Jersey Administrative Code. We are a public school district. We are not a private school district. Private schools can shut their doors like Stewart Country Day did this evening, indefinitely. Or like Princeton University did the other day, right? Everyone come back. We're not coming back after spring break. We do not have those rights to do something like that. We must be open for business. We must have students and staff present. We must have buses run. Our facilities must be open. After several creative conversations, the Attorney General, the Commissioner of Education, and the Commissioner of Health worked together to provide a path forward towards home instruction. Utilizing a provision in the code under home instruction, they found a creative solution that should a health-related closure be deemed necessary by state health officials in conjunction with school district leaders, specifically the superintendent, that based on that recommendation, a school could move to closure, and those days closed could be made up as e-learning days or virtual days under the provision of the 180-day requirement under the home instruction code, again, because it's deemed necessary from a school health closure determination with health official guidance, not a parent who's a doctor, not the school physician, public health officials, state or local. But quite frankly, the way this ultimately works is local officials talk to county officials talk to state officials. So quite frankly, it's going to come from the higher ups. And so at this time, what the provisions that we have in place as a district is we have 3 emergency closing days that are available to us. Those 3 emergency closing days are 2 in April, right before spring break, and 1 in May, right after Memorial Day, if I remember correctly. So we have 3 days available to us that should be closed without guidance from the health department. Those days would be used as emergency closing days, but they would not count towards the 180-day. You need to have the health department endorse a closure for the 180-day home instruction component to be able to be kicked in. Now, under home instruction code, I do not want to mislead the public. Home instruction is not like you're just signing up for an online class or a MOOC. It is remote learning in its finest. It is maximum 1 to 2 hours of instruction per day. It's not going to be perfect instruction. Different levels will have different access to different tools and different platforms. So should a need be to go into this, it's going to be done in emergency circumstances, and we are going to learn and grow through the process. Because remember, before Thursday night around 5 o'clock, we never were allowed to do this. We did not have emergency closure plans in place for school health related closure. So then what do? Right? On Friday, we gathered a team of 30 to 40 administrators, teacher resource specialists, teachers, union representation, school administrators, school content specialists, and we spent all day hashing out the plan at different levels under different circumstances. We worked through technology, we've worked to build a website, we've worked to build web links, we've done teacher surveys, we've looked for passwords, things that parents are going to need access to that maybe you got a back to school night but you haven't had to access since, so you have to find something from 4 or 5 months ago that was in paper perhaps, or maybe it was an old email. So we're trying to pull resources together. We are a Chromebook district, 5 through 12, so we are 1-to-1, and we know based on communications with parents that we have at least 100% communication digitally to our community. If for any reason anyone is aware of a family in need of support with respect to device or access, those families should contact their local building administration, and with technology, we will work to see what we can do to provide support during or prior to a closure. So we brought a team together. We then worked all weekend trying to build a plan. And actually put the plan in writing, because the plan, in order to be enacted, must be submitted to the Department of Education. So if you don't have the plan or you don't have the components of the plan, well, today we still yet do not have guidance on what is required in the plan. That being said, we have lots of conversations going on. Credit to our commissioner, credit to our Department of Education. I spent a good part of the weekend back and forth with our Assistant Commissioner Eno, giving feedback, getting feedback from them. Asking for guidance on the plan, asking questions about what was or wasn't going to be allowed. We were in conference calls Wednesday with the governor, on the phone with over 1,000 educators, superintendents, school administrators from around the state, taking direct calls from us. The governor himself taking the calls, taking the time, with health officials. We then went to Friday, Saturday. I've had daily communications with the highest positions in this Department of Education. Today, West Windsor-Plainsboro, Mount Olive presented our plans digitally through a Zoom platform to other state officials throughout the state. The first 2 school districts that have a written plan presented. This morning we communicated to our community the base, the backbones of the what if, what would we do. Yesterday afternoon, we brought our administrators together for an emergency meeting to make sure that they fully understood the expectations of the plan, because not everyone was available on Friday. This morning, after yesterday's meeting, we had a template PowerPoint presentation by grade level presented at an emergency faculty meeting across the board. So our faculty has been briefed on what would happen if. Our administration is aware of what would happen if. We have a sense of what would happen if we got to the point of closure. So within a day or two, we would be up and running, being able to utilize those emergency closing days. Now the question is, has the plan, and please know that the plan only gets you so far until you have to keep working on the plan, right? So we have about 10 days worth of lessons and work ready to go at the K-5 level. 6-12 is going to act very similar to Google Classroom. There's going to be opportunities using the G Suite platform and the way that classes are already being conducted today, and information is being disseminated to be able to be carried on. We'll make modifications to our schedules, so you will see difference, like windows of time, most likely in the 9 to 1. We're talking about maximum flexibilities with families. We talk about not knowing exactly, like a family may have a device. A family of an elementary student might have a device, but if the parents are home and need access to the device, that doesn't mean the student might be available when the teacher is. So we need to constantly make sure that the resources are available digitally. I use my family as an example. I have 5 kids, K-12. I don't have 5 laptops. So if you asked all of them to be online all day during that window, my children couldn't participate. I get it. I understand there's going to be complications, so we need to make sure resources are available. There's opportunities and ways in which families can provide information, and there's a feedback loop back from teachers to students for ongoing communication. So we have, and we will continue to work through challenges as they arise. What we don't know yet is what's going to happen with coronavirus. It's an evolving situation. You can only imagine the number of parent emails and communications between administrators that have been going on as we're all looking and tracking, and every time a university makes a decision, we hear about it. Whether it's a Rutgers professor in the audience, or whether it's a Princeton University family that have children in district, we've heard what your universities and your colleges are doing. We are being mindful of what they're doing, but we can't follow those rules. We cannot follow what the universities do. Again, there's certain provisions. At the same time, we're looking out for our most vulnerable. So yesterday morning, we started at 7 o'clock with food service providers for Sodexo and district food service representatives. Our food service director was at the USDA in Washington advocating for flexibility yesterday morning. She's on a train right now coming back to district after advocating down there. NJ Department of Agriculture has submitted a waiver request asking for maximum flexibility to the USDA, so we can try to make sure that we can feed children that aren't free and reduced lunch. All right, so we're thinking of all the different positions. We are looking at what are the impacts to testing. And most of us would be okay with some state testing going away, but SATs, AP, things that we know the kids, especially our high schoolers, are relying upon for college and for college acceptance. What's going to happen? We've already reached out and had preliminary conversations with College Board. Can we move test date windows? We do not have guidance yet on AP exams. So there are some high-profile tests that impact children's lives. How this impacts everything from how a board meeting runs, to the transfer of funds to make payroll, to what's going to happen on the construction site, to question after question after question emerges. When it comes to ultimately health and safety questions with respect to are you opened, are you closed? Ultimately, that comes in the direct conversation and guidance with health officials, and we need that guidance from them. We cannot just close for the sake of closing or for fear. I was asked, what did you feel about the Disney trip? Or what do you feel about the trip to DC today that left early this morning for High School South? Washington, DC is open. There's no ban on interstate trade. There's no ban on interstate travel. There's no ban on mass gatherings. There's no recommendations for closure. The monuments are open. The museums are open. There's no logical reason to close except for fear right now. Now, logical might not be the right word, because there is a logical fear here. I mean, there is clearly a serious health condition that's occurring. But right now, the recommendation is not to close or not to limit field trips or to limit any activities for the kids. We still held our plays. I noticed the science fairs were full this weekend. So we have activities still going. You came here this evening. We are all taking precautions on good hygiene, on hand washing. We are not discouraging students if they want to wear a mask. However, we are encouraging either because the CDC guidelines don't say that, don't recommend that you outright should. We're looking at this from the perspective of a personal choice. We're not ultimately discouraging the mask, but again, the guidelines currently don't call for it. And there are some health agencies that would say you shouldn't until you're actually ill, unless immunocompromised or health-related concern. So there's a lot to all this, and we will continue to monitor. We're continuing to be vigilant. We'll make a Disney decision up until the point of departure at the airport. If there's something that changes between now and the flight on Thursday morning, which the first flights go out around 10 a.m., we will, and the kids will be at the airport probably by about 6:37. We'll make that call. We'll make the hard call. But right now, our kids want to go. The families that came to our orientation meetings on Monday night are not advocating to not go. The only question I've had is, there's been a handful of questions, but things like, I wanted my child to wear a mask on the airplane and they don't want to. Can you tell me about how I should get them to do that? Right, so there's those kind of questions. And there's questions around what would happen if there's a quarantine when we're in Florida. Great question, right? What are the precautions Disney has taken? There's a lot. What if my child needs medication? Well, those are things we've handled on field trips forever. Every mass field trip that we've had of 300 or so students, it's inevitable that you have a health-related concern on those trips. Mr. Dalton and Mr. Earl and myself can all attest to phone calls that we've had with school administrators middle of the night about a student who's not well and they're being taken to a hospital or taken to urgent care, or they need medication, or we're working with a family to make sure that we're getting. We've always worked that out, and we always will, to take care of the kids when they're in our care. We should all be preparing and planning, whether it's our home preparedness, our work preparedness, schools to continue. We are trying to find pathways for our educators to make sure that they're connected and they know all the ways we're going to operate. And some of this will, as I said, evolve. And, it's been half an hour since the meeting started, and I can only imagine what's changed in this conversation in the last half an hour. And that's how fast it's changing, and that's how we're monitoring this. So if it requires to make a very difficult call of canceling a trip, limiting students' travel, closing school, we will do that. But at this time, we have no guidance from any health organization to do so. If we learn of isolated connections, or we learn of direct contact or direct transmission, that will change the conversation. But third party, someone's friend was at a party and my parents saw them at McCaffrey's and then or Wegmans, and then we went to another friend's house, and so we might be. We're not closing on that. That's not going to drive a closure. But if we have someone who is direct contact with someone who's impacted, who's been tested, and that changes the whole conversation, and we'll have to really take serious consideration to school district, individual quarantine, and we'll take that guidance through the health officials. With respect to parents asking questions about, I want to just keep my kids home. I don't feel safe. There are specific attendance rules that we must follow and adhere to. Our administrators are contacting families about emails that are coming that I'm just going to keep my 7-year-old home for the next 15 days because I'm not going to be working, so I'll just keep them home. There are provisions of homeschooling which are not the same as home instruction, and we are not encouraging families to do that. There are been isolated cases of families withdrawing children. We are not suggesting you do that at all. It's your parental right, and it's your parental right to keep a child home. Those could be unexcused absences potentially. If you're concerned about your child's health or your own health, contact your medical provider. If your medical provider provides notes and documentation, then we can have conversations about how we support. So there's so much to this, and quite frankly, I can talk all night about this. What I would say is, please know we're being incredibly mindful of what we put in place, the rules that we're following, what we put in place. We believe it's a serious public health item, a matter that we're doing. That we had the Department of Health here today to review our cleaning protocols to ensure that we're using the right products. Department of Health, West Windsor in particular, Jill Swanson has been remarkable support. I've talked to both township officials. We've had meetings with the Office of Emergency Management. Earl attended those as well. Our police partners, our mayors, our township council committees, our health offices, and remember, we're 2 towns, 2 counties, so we've talked to Middlesex County Health, and West Windsor Health, so just different structures. We've talked to all those agencies daily. Tomorrow, I'll be at the Department of Ed, again, helping to give feedback as part of being on a sub-task force for school preparedness for the state. We've been invited to be involved in conversations with the Chief Schools organization, listening about testing impacts. So we, as a district, are at the table with public health officials and with public education officials. We appreciate the opportunity to do so, but I would say just, we all need to be cautious, but we also need to stay calm, because in this, our kids are starting to panic based on the actions of our adults. Collectively, no finger pointing, but we have to be very mindful that our kids are on devices and are seeing things come across constantly. I know I've personally limited some of my children's device access because it's happening in such live time, they don't need to see that constant news thread. So as parents, we need to make some real decisions here and step in about what they do and don't see, because that is starting to impact our kids around their own, from a mental health, social, emotional standpoint. And with that, I'll conclude my comments at this time. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We have 2 presentations tonight. We're going to start with a presentation, update on our referendum and facility projects. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to our district architect, George Duthie.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on. It's on.
Great, thanks. Can't tell if it's coming across or not. It's good to be here again, and I have with us tonight is Dave Mackin from New Road Construction. He is the project principal for the administration of the construction aspects of the project. And also from my office, Steve Schreier, project architect, has been heavily involved, has been my right-hand person helping with the projects. As you know, there's a lot of things going on. And I'm going to be happy to tell you about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish since our last presentation in October. So, where are we now? For those of you who may have gone by Grover Middle School, you'll see we're well under construction at Grover. We'll talk a little more about that. But much has been accomplished since the last time I was up here presenting to you. But I want to talk a little bit about, because it's nice to start construction, and we passed the referendum some time ago, as you all know, but there's been a lot of steps that have been completed along the way. And many of the steps, they're time consuming, and they involve some complexities, things like agency reviews, there's design refinements and revisiting things, existing conditions, inquiries from the bidders on the project, lots of coordination and phasing, which Dave has been very actively involved in with his expertise as a construction manager, unanticipated conditions, and of course the district also has an ongoing energy savings improvement program as well, which we've also had to coordinate with. So, but where are we now? So the fire alarm system replacement, one of the projects in the referendum, now well underway at Dutch Neck School. We are completed with the fire alarm systems at Hvac, Town Center, and Village Schools. We'll be moving forward with Millstone River in the spring and summer of 2020, and then High School South Community in Hvac, concurrent with the construction that will be going on at those projects. HVAC upgrades at Millstone River and High School North. We opened bids for that project. Came in under budget, we're very happy to say. The project has been awarded. We've had our first meeting with the contractor. We're well underway on that project to get going this summer to start some work. slated for completion because it's a multiple phase project in December of 2021. Emergency generators, those are complete. That project is now completed. The generators are up and running, ready to turn emergency power onto your buildings as needed. Community, middle school, Grover, Millstone River, and Village. High School South will also be getting a generator as part of its construction project. Okay? Maurice Hawk Elementary School is essentially completed. There are some punch list items being worked on right now. We have one or two project approval issues from the township that have to be dealt with, but it is essentially a completed project. Town Center Elementary School addition. Now, this was not a referendum project, by the way, neither was Hawk. Those were two separate capital projects. But Town Center is completed and is occupied at this time. And as I said earlier, Grover Middle School, well underway at this time. Completion next summer. And we have the Energy Savings Improvement Program going on as well through a different contractor, Schneider Electric, who's given us a list of tasks that they're also going to accomplish. So we have a lot going on with the energy projects as well, also moving along. And again, another project that requires a lot of planning. I don't want to shut that. Thanks. Renovation project. So, out to bid. We have projects out to bid right now. We've bid quite a few projects actually since we've started. Toilet room renovations, bus driveway, and security vestibules at the schools indicated are all out to bid right now. We'll be opening bids on March 24th, awarding on the 31st at the board meeting, and completing that work in the summer of 2020. So those projects are out to bid at this time. Also out to bid, Phase 1 site work at High School South. Now, that is a separate broken out project for the site at High School South that will take place this summer so we can get that portion of the work finished to get the parking lot and driveways completed by the time school reopens again in the fall. We also have the main High School South project getting ready to go out to bid. There are still some agency things that have to be worked out there. That project is essentially ready to go to bid. Community Middle School, out to bid right now. Again, opening bids March 19th, next week, with an award at the March 31st meeting. And we have some capital projects as well, not in the referendum. Roof restoration work being done at High School South and Thomas Grover Middle School to continue with the district's ongoing maintenance of its roofs as they reach the end of their useful life. The bus compound at High School North to give the district a secure place to store the buses. And salt storage buildings, which are going to be constructed at High School North and Village Elementary School by next fall. So, one of the exciting projects, I think, is media centers. We're going to be working on the media centers in the schools. The first phase of the media center project, Dutch Neck Elementary School and Millstone River, and I know the slides are hard to see, but these will become a much more learning commons type of environment with a makerspace and other exciting elements, a lot of flexibility, and I'm really looking forward to seeing those projects completed. They're going to be great. And we're going to be continuing those projects also in the next phase next summer, which we'll talk about. But we've had a collaboration process here that's been great, working with the district and the media specialists and everybody else, and very highly flexible and functional designs. We're looking forward to those projects. Phase 2 of the media centers at Hvac, Hawk Town Center and Village will take place next summer, summer of 21. There'll be additions and HVAC upgrades at Hvac Elementary School. That will bid in the fall of 2020 for completion in December of 2021. And also High School North on a similar schedule for the dance addition at High School North. High School South coming up, just to give you some ideas. Some of the renderings of the High School South as we're envisioning it. Some of the colors and things, and not everything's been decided on yet, but to give you an idea of the formative look of the building and the types of materials that we're thinking of using, this will just give you some ideas. This is the parking lot at High School South. It's going to be substantially reconfigured. To the upper portion of the plan is Clarksville Road, okay? To the left side of the plan, the two brown masses that you see there are the two additions that are going down to the front of High School South. And then you'll see we've separated those closest to the building as the bus access lane, a separate drop-off area, and student parking, as well as storm drainage and landscaping. We've managed to squeeze about an additional 10 parking spaces into the plan. But we've greatly improved the traffic flow, drop-off areas for vehicles, separation of pedestrian traffic from bus traffic and things like that. So a much improved High School South parking lot plan. And of course, this is High School South. And the plan is hard, it's hard to see, but just to give you an idea of the impact of the project and the things that we'll be working on, things like the library, the renovation of the playhouse, the renovation of a home ec to a culinary arts laboratory, the early childhood development lab, and of course the main office, child study team and guidance functions. The main office will be moving to the front of the building, closer to the new parking lot renovation, which we saw earlier, and a wing for new science rooms. I don't know if this is going to work, but on the right, upper right-hand side, you'll see 8 new science labs going into a 2-story addition. So that's the High School South project. And again, a schedule for High School South. Completion essentially at the end of 2021. That's the plan, between the new construction and the renovation work that's taking place there. So, thank you very much.
Just add a couple of words. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing New Road to be a part of this. We started probably a little bit a year ago or so with Town Center School. I feel very fortunate to be a part of this, basically from the inception of some of these projects that George has in the planning phase. We're partners, so to speak, in reviewing the drawings and comments and working together on trying to phase the projects through the construction. It's so far so good. I kind of wanted to compliment the architect because the drawings are very complete. The projects that we've already completed are running very smoothly. We've been very fortunate with good contractors that have adhered to the milestone dates and even the bids and the resulting costs are under budget. So we're maintaining that straight and narrow direction thanks to George's guidance, and so far it's been very successful. I left a little project summary at all your places. It has a little bit more gory detail than we probably want to read, but it has the costs for the contractors, contract awards, the status of where they are in payment, the retainage, that sort of thing, if you're interested. I really feel I'm very excited about the projects, and I think they're so far so good. Just wanted to pass that along to you. So thanks very much again.
Thank you very much. Does anybody on the board have any questions? We're ready to move on to the next presentation?
So if I could just also send my thanks and compliments to Steve Schreier. Steve is one of the project architects, to George Hvac and to Dave Mackin. So Steve specifically works with George on site with FEHD, handled a lot of the project community, South Design Lead. And then you have Dave in New Roads Construction, that's the overseeing project manager. He is the eyes and ears for you, the board, making sure that they stay on target. So thank you to Dave. And then because of that contract with New Roads, for the community to know that that means we have representatives from New Roads Construction that are out on the job sites that are actually helping to manage the project in live time with the building administration. So it's providing a project manager at community, a project manager at Grover. So if there are construction-related challenges, if there are scheduling, whether it's delivery, test dates, book fair, things that need to be worked out, there's a point person on site besides the administration that can work through challenges. And then, of course, they manage and oversee all the contractors that are on site and make sure the workflow is happening and that they're staying on project schedule and are holding them accountable to not only the budget, the project schedule, the task list, the coordination, And so there's a lot of work. These are huge projects. We're talking about 114 million and change, plus the capital projects work, plus the ESEP work, plus the prior capital projects of Town Center and Hvac. Collectively, over $175 million worth of work occurring at any given time right now. So just a massive feat going on throughout the district. So thank you all for your work. So that is perhaps a nice segue to our budget. And tonight is our requirement for a presentation of the tentative budget that must be awarded or approved this evening and then submitted to the Executive County Superintendent as part of the process and the requirements of our review checks and balances within the state of New Jersey. At times, Dr. Russo might join me or jump in from the microphone, but I did want to just say thanks to all our administrators and our budget managers for the work they've done throughout this budget build process. It takes a huge effort to put together a budget of this magnitude to ensure that we're meeting and living our mission and making sure that we're funding appropriately and being respectful to our taxpayers, but meeting the needs of our students. We talk about our mission statement is that building upon our tradition of excellence, the mission of the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District is to empower all learners to thoughtfully contribute to a diverse and changing world with confidence, strength of character, and a love of learning. And we, as you all know, we have gone through a strategic planning process where we have 3 strategic goals that really focus on ensuring that students, we're empowering them to value their individual learning journeys. So as we talk about that, we talk about goal 1, which is really about ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all children. Goal 2, global citizenship, and goal 3, which has really been summed up as the whole child or our social emotional learning goal. So it's every child, global child, and whole child would be a way to think about it. So from a financial overview perspective, when we talk about building a school budget, we talk about budget as a planning tool. We talk about considerations of contingencies. Budget manages risk. It has to be fiscally responsible. It reflects our values and our mission, and it considers safeguards and buffers. It's important to know that we do not have a line of credit. We do not have a credit card. As a school district, we budget to a very specific dollar. If we don't hit that dollar, it comes at reductions in other areas to make budget. So we have to be very mindful of how monies move within our school budget. As you know, there's a well-established budget process and timeline that is required through the state of New Jersey. I'd say WWP goes a little bit above and beyond with all our meetings around budget, but you get a sense of the flow and how this goes out. A lot of work through committee, a lot of work as we start thinking about capital projects and long-term financial plans. We've had some pretty big conversations this year that I'll get into in a few moments. November through February, a lot of meetings with those budget managers. During that time, we had 2 opportunities for board retreats to talk specifically about the budget. We just had our last one on February 20th. The following week, the governor's state address on the budget was on the 25th, and we did receive our state aid numbers on Thursday, February 27th. This evening, we have the adoption and filing of the preliminary budget to the county superintendent on the agenda this evening. And then we receive feedback from the county office on the state of the budget and any feedback or comments that we might have to address. And then we go forward with a public hearing officially, presentation back to the community, and then a public vote by the Board of Education on the adoption of the budget that sets the spending parameters essentially for the 2021 school year. I want to just recognize our finance department. Not just Dr. Russo, who sits here before you this evening, but all the members of this team, whether it's the comptrollers or the accounts payable department or our payroll supervisor and her team, or our district accountants or our administrative assistants and the staff. For 11 straight years, the school district has been recognized with the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. And for the last 6 straight years, we received the ASBO School Business Officials International Meritorious Budget Award for budget planning. I defy you to find any district in the state of New Jersey that has that record of consistency with respect to financial planning and financial reporting. With respect to the way we stepped into the school year, we started to think about budgetary options and what would those percentages look like if we went to certain levels. And there's all requirements about how money moves and what you can do to what percentages legally. So we started looking in terms of 5 options, in terms of just a straight 2%. We also hear that it's a 2% budget. But that's not necessarily true under the state code. It's 2% in allowances. So then you have to look at what are those allowances. So there's something called bank cap. Bank cap exists when you don't use your full level of spending in a prior year. And in fact, it goes back 3 years? 3 years. So if you don't go to your full spending authority, you're allowed to bank a certain amount of money. So your monthly allowance of $200, you don't spend it, you carry over $200. So we're allowed to carry over a certain amount of money that we didn't spend in a prior year. Then there's also something called an SGLA, or Spending Growth Limitation Adjustment for healthcare. And so that's if there's an increase in healthcare from the state perspective that changes the way our private insurance goes, you might be able to take an adjustment on healthcare and tax a certain authority there as well. So as a result of that, we had some additional dollars. So the question then became, if we have, this is our spending options, what is mindful? We built the original budget to 2.45 before the state aid numbers. And that's important to say because there's been a shift since the board retreat at this point, favorable to the community, I should say, and give that away on the front end. So we originally built the budget to 2.45 and asking for guidance up or down based on what we may or may not be able to then provide to students and staff as a result of the spending authority. We had some really big challenges this year. One, our healthcare costs are increasing. Our healthcare costs are, when you add in all benefits, are over $30 million. So if that increases at 5%, we're talking $1.5 million. And so we're budgeting a projected increase of $1.1 million in healthcare. We have contractual salary obligations through negotiated agreements at $2.3 million. This also includes some growth positions that have been added in from last year that have to be rolled into this year's budget that were budgeted for, but they show up in the increased salary line. But $2.3 million is around our annual salary payment increase. So the staff increases 8 positions this year, and I'll have a slide showing what that is. We also have transportation increases. That comes in a couple different categories. It comes in renewed routes. So all the buses that we run across the district have renewals. They increase gas costs, insurance costs. We added some routes with respect to some additional special education runs. And we do have some new developments that are yielding some new challenges to out-of-district placements that we either do not send students currently or are being added in late, so the bid costs have been very extraordinary in the financial end. So we built in $1.2 million on the transportation increases. We also stand here before you with the expiring contract for Aramark, and on tonight's agenda is an award to a new custodial and maintenance supervisor company called ABM, and that's on the agenda this evening for award. You do notice a $1.9 million increase there to special education, and that comes in the grounds of staff, potential staff increases in their salary lines, out-of-district tuition costs, and related services. And anticipated, and no, we'll leave it at that. I mean, the reality is that even since our December budget retreat, we've had 9 to 12 students move into the district with IEPs that existed from another placement that we have to accommodate and meet the needs of the students. So we had to add some additional money to tuition. ESIP is what George and Dave both referenced as the Energy Savings Improvement Program. The board may remember that we anticipate a budgetary savings, so you might say, well, why is there an increase if we're saving? In year 1, we have a payment due on the debt, but we do not have anything built yet. Right? So it's part of a 20-year payment, but you don't reap the benefits of the savings until you actually build the stuff. So we have to essentially float the payment in our budget. And then we're projecting capital projects. This will come out of our capital projects line of $8 million of project, and I'll show you what those are in a few moments. So the first discussion topic that we sort of talked about is just budget considerations. So things that we think about as we're building and that are built into the program in the area of special education. The new development of Project Freedom is yielding a significant number of students that are living in that community that have IEPs, so that was not something we anticipated when that particular development was built. We were told it was going to be restricted to adults with disabilities. I've come to learn through conversations with our mayor that there was a lawsuit, and as a result of the lawsuit, it has become the criteria changed. The criteria is now income qualified. So it shifted, and so income qualified brings a different family unit, different family structure. We welcome the families to our community, but it has brought with it some unexpected financial challenges that we're working through. We are underway in a program review with special education. It's just launching now. So we have seen additional out-of-district tuition placements, but overall, year over year, in past years, we are down in doing some really good work with building programs in district, but it also means that we do have some additional tuition contracts. We look at our programs each year, and as we build programs pre-K to K, K to 1, 1 to 2, we have to continually add not only teachers, but teachers and instructional aides and occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, child study team members. So when you build a program in-house, if we go back in the histories of special education, we were up to 130 students out of district placement. Up before December, we were under 90. Right? So we've worked to bring a lot of students back to district by opening programs, and that ultimately will save the taxpayers dollars because we think we can offer a better program at a lower price and meet the needs of our children. But we need to make sure that we staff overtime to meet the needs. Otherwise, you're going to see an increase in out-of-district tuition. That doesn't mean we have less kids than before. It just means we have less kids going out and more students staying in district in a least restrictive environment, which is exactly what you're supposed to do as a school community. So credit to the board, a credit to our special education department, our administration, our teachers, and our families. But we need to make sure that we continue to support those families, those children. So obviously that drives staffing. Instructional considerations, right now we're constantly monitoring our ELL, our ESL, our English language learner, our English student language learners. Our technology electives, we added 2 in program of studies back in November and December when we voted on the program of studies. But each one of those rooms, there's 2 high schools, 2 rooms each. Each one needs math labs. That's about $100,000 in computers just on that one line. And strategic planning, professional development process that we continue to support year over year. We also had a library media review, and by going through the media center program review, we know that we need to sort of right-size our budgets to ensure equitable distribution of funds across all the schools on a per-pupil allocation. Some of the bullets are the kind of things that we think about equalizing. So in order to make sure that we're equally spending on a per-pupil allotment by school, we need to increase the budget by $100,000 to be within recommended spending limits. We also know that our website has been something that we've wanted to spend some time and focus on. We have a new communications team that has some background and expertise in web development, but we need to update the tools that we provide them. So there's some equipment. We also have Ty here. At one point, Ty was borrowing equipment just to be able to film the meetings, from going to Best Buy for the 30-day warranty and turning it back so we can film it. So just things we shouldn't be doing, and we can do better. We can buy some equipment. Communication tools like constant contact. I'm not suggesting we'll go with that, but what we do know is there's individuals even on the board right here that would like to get information about plays, musicals, things about schools, but you don't have any children in the district. So there's a lot of community members that would like to learn more about the things we do, but we don't have a communication mechanism. And those aren't huge subscription costs, but they're things we have to budget for. The website clearly is the biggest cost driver on the front end. And then there's this requirement of archiving, making sure that we're keeping digital records. So we need to think about our archiving systems over time for social media. When it comes to staff increases, these are the programs. DutchNet, we know we have 9 sections of second, 9 sections of first, and 8 sections of third. So as the kids are aging up, we need to make sure we go to 9 sections of third. We know the kindergarten will remain even behind based on enrollment projections. So we need to add another teacher at DutchNet. High school, we're going up 80 students. I think of this, I don't think of it, I think of this in requests. 80 students, 7 requests each, 560 requests, divided by 24 is over 4 teachers worth of growth. but I know too many years of doing this work, you'll never get full teacher growth because you're going to have some sections that are currently running below average now. So you're going to have some push and pull on your schedule. And if we don't build in two, you're going to have completely overcrowded. It's not going to, most likely will not be clean, like I need an English teacher. What it's going to become is Ms. Bean saying, you know what, I need 40% growth math here. And we start building in a partial FTE, or two teachers take 6 classes each, or we might have a partial FTE already and it becomes a full-time person. Right? So when we think about staffing, we think about requests. I can't tell you exactly what it is now because the kids are in the middle of scheduling now. We're over at the middle school today doing scheduling at Grover today. So we're currently in the build process, and so we'll know more when we have our meetings in early April, whether it's digitally or in person. But we'll be talking about our sections for next year. In the area of special education, we have done tremendous work in building autistic programs, and we have growth coming through the system because we've been successful. So we need to make sure we're staffing appropriately. The BCA is a board-certified behavior analyst. This is a staff position that works with students that are either have an IEP and are classified, or students that are regular education students that are mostly transition to the community, that come to the community with some form of behavioral need some redirection, some guidance, some coaching. Board-certified behavior analysts provide that targeted work, make early lifts early, and then what it is it absolutely becomes a support necessary in a moment of time in a child's development that often can help move a student to a new trajectory, and ultimately those services are no longer needed and they move on to the next student. The BCBAs are not without work constantly. If anything, it's a great job to have if you're going to get contracted for because it's $200 an hour. So it's about $1,200 a day for an outside BCBA to come in. So you can imagine what the monthly cost is if we don't have in-district staff. And in the area of IAs, we're looking at, again, as we grow the DLI program, the dual language immersion program in second grade next year, providing a support in the target language in both Mandarin and in our Spanish program. And then in the area of endocrinologists, we don't have an endocrinologist accessible to the district, but we've had a growing need of consultation services, support for our staff, for our nurses, our teachers. So we're looking at a monthly expenditure, just like we have like a concussion specialist that's on staff on salary for a monthly allotment to help our athletics department and our teachers or get coached and trained in an area that the student has a concussion. We need some help interpreting guidelines that are coming from CHOP, coming from out-of-state medical providers. So we're looking to contract with an endocrinologist to give us guidance and to give training to our staff. And so that is their staff. Construction updates, I'm not going to do what George and Dave just did, but are just on the area of capital that drives towards that $8 million. These are some of the things that are there. High School North and Grover roof, those are roof projects that were here a year ago, but because the bids came in so high, we're in that bidding window that will get more favorable rates. We have money budgeted again. The door replacement, you see carryover, it's just monies that have already been board allocated that the projects didn't get done because we were spending so much time at Hvac and Town Center and getting the other projects off the ground. CMS parking lot expansion as part of the referendum work. There's also, we decided above and beyond the referendum to expand the parking lot, and it requires some field work as well, so we need to put money in there. The money I talked about for the ESEP before, the $615, that was for the yearly payment. This is actually towards the project list. So you may recall we budgeted about $29 million worth of ESEP projects, but we only bonded about $25 million worth of money, which means we had to make a financial contribution out of capital reserve for the differential, and that's what the ESEP here is. High School North Composter, we have been identified as a school district to potentially partner with Princeton University. There'll be 3 school districts in the state. When we work with our green teams and our student leaders at those levels, one of our students came forward with a recommendation of a potential grant with Princeton University. Princeton has submitted the grant with us in it. We're not sure of the status of that now, but our contribution towards that grant would be the physical building around the composter. just getting named in the grant and awarding the grant and showing a commitment to the grant is important. It doesn't mean the grant happens, and it doesn't mean we finally commit. There's a lot of questions about how it ultimately works and the implementation. The finance committee, the township is going to have to weigh in on down the road, but we're making a financial commitment, at least to the structure. And if we don't go forward, the money goes back to the capital projects account, and the community doesn't lose that money. Then there's been this ball stopper project that we think is going to ultimately not happen based on current recommendations, but that money will just be absorbed back, but we're still in debate over the road there on 571. And then just annual building and grounds. This is your asphalt work, your locker work, your sidewalk repair work, your stairwell tread work, whatever building and grounds needs to identify as small projects that are not these massive projects. There's an allocation of dollars to sort of knock out small building and grounds projects. Then the ESEP, George talked about it, but we've been meeting with Schneider Electric and others. The financing is being finalized. The summer installation schedule is being worked out. Coordination meetings underway. We've been talking about safety protocols and material storage. Any site that we're going to have construction, we need to find some kind of construction trailers for delivery of materials as well as staging for the staff. And then we talked about all the referendum projects already, so we just bypass that slide. That was in the first presentation. And then building and grounds. I referenced that it's on the agenda this evening for a contract award of ABM. So we opened bids, we interviewed responsive bidders, we developed, so some of our thinking, big picture, was we know we've had Ironmark now for 10 years. And in that time, we've had challenges, ebbs and flows with the relationship. With that, we looked at ways that we could potentially bring back some members of WWP building and grounds staff. So as we went through this process, there's been a lot of steps taken over the last couple of years to get us here, so we can make an informed decision tonight. We've developed a non-affiliate F policy. The non-affiliate F policy essentially represents the former Foreman's Association policy, Foreman's Association group. It was a former unionized employee category that was about 13 or 14 members. These were your ops foremen of years gone by. So that non-affiliate policy has been built, and the job description has been approved. We negotiated new language for custodial and grounds with our WWPSA, our service association, because we couldn't figure out how to even build a budget for the consideration unless we knew what the cost points were going to be. And because these positions had not been filled in 10 years, they weren't renegotiated in prior consideration of prior contracts. So we renegotiated a one-year extension with a service association a year ago. We rebuilt language here for the custodial and grounds so we could have an informed decision. And then we discussed extensively the staffing for next year. We had 4 responsive bidders, Aramark, Pritchard, Sodexo, and ABM. There was an addendum done at some point in time when we learned that Aramark was unionizing in December. That when you unionize, there's a price point differential. You see Sodexo's lower dollar, they essentially didn't take into consider any of the unionized contract increases. And as a result of that, their bid was not accepted because it doesn't meet the actual needs of the honoring the contract. It couldn't be properly implemented. It also undercut the staffing projections by over 20 staff positions. So while the dollar looks, why would you go in under 3? It didn't meet the contract, it didn't meet the bid specs, and it didn't meet the staffing requirements. So ABM is the recommendation tonight, but with a big caveat. We'll be awarding the full totality of the contract because that's what we have to do, but then we'll be immediately messaging ABM not to fill 21 of those positions. It is our recommendation that we bring back 21 grounds team staff to join our current 5-member team. We have a district director of building and grounds. We have 2 district assistant directors. We have a district plumber and a district secretary of building and grounds. So in addition to those 5, we're recommending these 21 positions return. In the non-affiliate category, 11 ops foremen, 2 HVAC mechanics, 1 vehicle mechanic, 1 electrician, and 1 utility foreman or a grounds foreman. And then in the WWPSA contract, 4 ground staff. So all the field mow set up, all the athletic challenges, all those concerns that we've had over time with staffing, with plowing, with parking lots, with just even the trimming of bushes and weed whacking around our facilities, the beautification of our schools, making sure our baseball fields and softball fields and lacrosse fields and football is set up, and field hockey, all that will be controlled by the district. And then the district courier, the person that brings the bail pays to the court or to the township or drops the pony off at board member, whatever the courier getting that position back would be service association positions. So net 21 positions returned to district, and that is a big part of the building and grounds. And that all, when we cost it out, essentially costs the same as if ABM would be filling these positions. So we're able to bring those folks back for essentially budget neutral. The reason we're not recommending custodial back at this point, and when we looked at the consideration, quite frankly, the the unionized contract benefits are more beneficial, and we didn't know about that against December when they unionized. They're more beneficial than the benefits that we negotiated back last spring. So we would have a lot of difficulty retaining staff because we could never afford to bring everyone. So we would essentially have to bring a percentage of district custodial against a percentage of ABM custodial, and one group would have a better benefit package than another. And at this point, we did not feel that made any sense. Also, 21's a lot to people on board at a time when we had every building in the district going under construction. So to try to hire 115 or so positions at one time, we did not think was a prudent move. We could always reassess that at a later time down the road as a board. So the recommendation in front of you is bring an ABM for essentially custodial services, and all of the positions would be back to the district. From the perspective of budget parameters, this is just a slide I've already shown to just sort of get us back to where we were. And then what we didn't know about at the time of our board retreat on the 20th was that state aid number. We still will not know prescription increases or healthcare increases until mid-year next year. But something for us to watch is all the stuff that's going on right now between the NJAA and government, and Governor Sweeney, but Senator Sweeney, in the potential deal that's being talked about there. And then we'll have to see what happens, because that could have some benefit increase or benefit considerations for us to be mindful of. What we do know we have to watch, of course, is that 2% general fund, the bank path of healthcare and enrollment, our cap reserve allocation, and state aid increases. So we had originally built to a 2.45 budget, or 2.45% budget increase on the general fund. However, the state aid numbers came back favorable. We were anticipating 790,000, so it represents an increase of about 350,000 above and beyond what we were anticipating based on prior projections from last year that were released by the Department of Ed. So as a result of that increase, we had to weigh the options, and what we looked at saying it made sense. And my caveat, of course, is this number's not final until the governor signs off on it and the legislature approves it, right? And that happens usually June, and in that famous beach picture of Governor Christie in July that year, right? But usually late June is when this usually gets figured out. Our recommendation is to decrease the board authority of 2.45 to 2.25, therefore preserving 331,000 of bank cap that was going to be utilized this year. We would still be able to make a capital reserve contribution to fully fund our referendum payments with the addition of the state aid. And we also were just notified of a small charter increase for the Hvac up in East Brunswick that we were required to pay for the students that live in our boundaries. And the remaining 204,000 and change, we would take that 1.1 and put it towards some anticipated expenditure cost growth in transportation and special education that we felt we were not fully funded. We are not adding any additional positions above and beyond the 8 positions I referred with the additional state aid. So we're actually saving the state aid monies to a different time period for potential consideration. So with that, we're at 2.25 budget to budget on the general fund. We do have now the ability to look at our future bank cap. And so we know that we have a taxing authority would essentially be about 2.36% next year if we just use the bank cap that's expiring. The following year, we know we could go to about 2.2% using the bank cap that's expiring. And unless bank cap is generated in another budget in another way than we know of now, there will be no bank cap available in 22-23, so we would be back at 2% in an out year unless the funding formulas change. So that essentially is what's in front of you this evening. Dr. Russo, do you want to just talk through what the two resolution slides look like?
Sure. Should get up. Yeah, so the resolution, you remember like the referendum resolution is quite confusing. This is as well, too. Total general fund budget $212,000, $212 million realized. There are entries in this because of accounting rules that are quite frankly double entries. Total special education revenue, $2.2 million. Total debt service is $12.1 million as we had projected. That is paid through the general fund, and there's no increase to the taxpayer, as we mentioned, because of the referendum. It's being paid out of capital reserve. And then the total budget is $227 million. However, that's not the actual budget because, again, there are some transactions that are counted double, and they're on the next slide. You see the local tax levy is $169 million. So when you see the resolution before you, and this is what gets approved and sent to the county office, it says included in the general fund budget is $7.3 million to be deposited into the capital reserve for transfer or repayment of debt. That's the $7.3 million. That's what it was 2-3 years ago. That amount goes from the general fund into the capital reserve account. As mentioned, that's tied to how we had shared that the increase, that the referendum would not increase taxes. So that amount is the same. Goes from general fund into the capital reserve account. The next line, included in the general fund, is $8.055 million to be withdrawn from the capital reserve account to support the funding of capital projects. Again, that's just that sentence. What that means is that's the groups at High School North and Grover that you saw. That's the that list of summer projects that we're going to do. The increase in parking space at community, the increased door lock, the improvement of the door locks, doors, those sort of issues. So that's taking our capital reserve money. We have to notify the public that we're doing that. That's all part of the budget guidelines. And this wording is right out of the budget document, meaning prescribed from the state. We did not make it up. Included in the general fund is $3.2 million for deposit into the Board of Education Capital Reserve account for future funding of capital projects. That means is that money is being deposited, as it says, from the general fund into the capital reserve account for future projects. That number is actually down from $4.6 million from last year and down from $5 million from the year before. The reason that number is increased is because if you saw the increases, because the increase in tuition, increase in transportation, those kind of issues. So the increases this year precipitated putting a little less money into the capital reserve account. However, at the end of this year, June 30, we'll review our balances at June 30, and we typically put about $1.75 million from our balances back in the capital reserve, not back in, but in the capital reserve. So that number, in the end, should be around $5 million. So we will be able to self-fund the referendum as we described at the referendum time. We had this final sentence is just saying there's programs and services in addition to the basic standards. That's what that's saying. If we didn't have to say that, you would have no program, quite frankly. That is a minimalist statement. If we did not have to make that, you had no, believe me, we would have nothing. Tax levy includes $414,000 in bank cap. Again, we have to mention that we're using that spending authority. And that's how we go from 2 to 2.5%.
2.25.
Yeah, 2.25. Sorry. And I believe that's the last slide. You know, one thing I'll say, if I can, real quickly, while I do have the mic, you may have seen in the headlines about the health benefit changes. The state $1 billion, $600 million savings to districts, $400 million savings to employees. That's basically comes from the creation of. We don't have any details yet, but from the sketchy details we have. Basically, that's the creation of 2 new plans. That would be if everyone opted into those plans, and it would be one of the impacts that hasn't been discussed anywhere is the fact that if you opt into those plans, right now in Chapter 78, employees pay a percentage of the premium. So as the premium changes, they pay a percentage of that. In that agreement, if they opt into one of the new plans, they pay a percentage of salary, which is a much lower amount. So I have no faith that that's going to save us any money, and that the state overall savings is going to be the $1 billion that they claim. That's only if everyone moved, and I don't see the savings in the district coming at all because the employee will not have to pay the same percentage they were paying before as a percentage of premium. That's just a little caveat. So if you see that and come to us and say, why are you increasing your health benefit costs? I'm just worried it's going to be a large impact. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Roos. Any questions from members of the board?
Thank you. That brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. The board invites thoughts and reactions on agenda items and items of concern from members of the community who are present. Each participant is asked to give his or her name name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer, and the public comment period shall be limited to 60 minutes. None? Just speak very close to the mic, please.
My name's Mariella O'Brien, 24 Yeager Road. Earlier you talked about guidance from the health department or CDC. If you were to get a call and they say, you know, we recommend you close, is it taken as a recommendation or as a directive? And is there any room for pushback?
For the good of the public, usually we don't have back and forth at the podium. Once we take all public comments, I'll see where we're at with the statement. Thank you.
Mark Hugh, 14 Hawk Drive. First of all, thank you for a very detailed update on the budget and on the coronavirus situation as well. I just want to add 2 things. One is that for the Disney trip, I'm wondering if it's possible when they come back, we could have a quarantine on the seniors and maybe the teachers for 2 weeks. So just to everyone, the remaining safe. And the second is regarding the school closure. I know that many kids probably have, like those parents have to go to work, and maybe some maybe have a single parent family, and that parent has to go to work as well. So I'm wondering if the school could adopt like a hybrid approach. If the family decide to send the kid to the school, they will continue to be able to do so, and if they decide to keep the kid at home and do home learning, then they will be able to do so. So it will be easier on those families that would really struggle to keep the kids at home. And finally, I just want to make an observation that it's really frustrating to see that we're bounded by all these rules in this very challenging time, that we were not able to do much unless some dreadful things really happen. You know, such is, I would say, the stupidity of human beings. Many lives have been lost in the Wuhan city and in Iran and in Italy and all over the world. But instead of like learning from the mistakes those people have committed, we decide basically we want to learn all this lesson from like zero ourselves again. So, but anyway, I thank you for the board member and thank you for the superintendent of the service.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Makran Bidwai, Windsor-Plainsboro. I had no intention to say, but based on this gentleman's comments, I'm still wrapping my head around that Windsor University can have a directive to shut or at least discourage students from coming after the spring break, which is, by the way, starting on the 14th, not as some parents were debating that, oh, the spring break is in April. Facts are facts. So, I understand everything the superintendent said. However, I want to remind this board and the superintendent that there was one school right here which closed against or without the advice of the health department or anybody. I believe that is leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonia Gawas, 28 Melville Road. I'm also a member of Westminster Council, but I'm speaking as a parent. My kids are in Millstone River School. I want to congratulate Officer Jay. Thank you. I see him pretty much on a daily basis, and I've seen many officers in our school district. They are absolutely incredible people. Kids love them, absolutely love them all the time. These officers know all the children by their first names. That's how incredible they are. So congratulate and thank you for awarding our officer. And just being on the PTA board, I see the questions that I receive. I can only imagine the millions of questions coming your way. I just want to thank you for taking the time to educate and inform everyone about all these steps that are being taken behind the scenes that not everybody knows about. Thank you again.
Thank you. Is that it? Everybody? No? One more.
My name is Jerome Wang. I live in 3 Stanton Court, Windsor-Plainsboro. What bring me here is because of the trip. My daughter is a senior year in North High. So I'm wondering if we gathering all hundreds of kids to Florida. You know, right now New Jersey is in emergency state, also in Florida is an emergency state. If we carry this coronavirus to there, or they carry the coronavirus from there to our community, the coronavirus effect to their parents, separating the community. So who's gonna be the responsible for that kind of sickness? And the second, what I thought is, if any kids infected in Florida, it's outstate, they need to get a treatment, medical treatment there, they need to quarantine there. Who's gonna take care of this? So I would like mm, officer here to give me the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment? So I'm going to close the public comment period now, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Harold because I believe he has some comments to make.
I'll do my best to try to, off the cuff, talk through some of the questions that came up. And I appreciate the different concerns that were raised. With respect to the concern about pushing back against the state official, I wouldn't say it's a pushback. If there's sometimes a clarification in a process of trying to understand. As we're here tonight, there's been a presumptive positive case in Robbinsville, right? But that presumptive positive case is a Robbinsville Township employee who lives in Burlington. So that employee has no connection to the school system, has no children in the school system, doesn't live in the boundaries of the school system. The school system will be operational tomorrow. So that would be now there may be some confusion because you might see West Windsor Health Department advised. West Windsor oversees Hightstown, Robbinsville, and West Windsor. So the health office oversees 3 communities actually. So just in case you see West Windsor Health Department coronavirus, it's Robbinsville, not us. But so the push, it would be understanding, like, it's trying to understand the fact patterns. And if they ultimately said close, it's our recommendation, I'd be hard pressed to go against that recommendation. Because at that point, we're talking about a health-related concern that our health officials are telling me it's in the public best interest that. And I don't see that being something that I would go against. I know. And our health officials are pretty level-headed about this. You know, they've been through a lot of other. We went through H1N1 together. We've been through other emergency closures together. We had preparedness plans back then. We weren't getting a barrage. In the past, I never would have known that there's a presumptive positive while sitting live time in a meeting, right, next door. I shouldn't know about the 32-year-old in New York that works and lives in this town, in Fort Lee, and takes the bus in. Like, we know way too much information about individuals that are getting ill, but that's because we're all on social, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and it's happening in live time. But no one's asking me about how many kids have the flu right now in district, right? And we keep account with the health departments, right? So not to say that this isn't contagious and it doesn't spread, because it does. That's clearly, the science is there. With respect to the Disney trip and the quarantine, I am sure that the seniors would like nothing more than to go to Disney and then come back and be in 14 days at home, especially excused home. But a quarantine will only occur for the students should there be an exposure concern, and they're back with an exposure concern, and the health department tells us that we need to quarantine. So we would take the guidance that way. I actually have had that hypothetical question. With respect to the students, we'll take it a little out of sequence, but with respect to the students are down there, and now we have a presumptive positive, like on Disney grounds, and then all of a sudden we have our kids quarantined in Florida. We have had that conversation with our travel agent, and quite frankly, their suggestion was we would work to get the families towards their kids, but that assumes 1, not 300 plus. That also means the staff is quarantined. So our staff are responsible for the kids when they go. I know that our juniors are currently at the Kennedy Center enjoying Washington, D.C. this evening. I've already been notified that all is well in D.C. right now. Is it possible that while they're at the Kennedy Center, someone at the Kennedy Center could have the coronavirus, and in 12 days we get notified that everyone that was in D.C. in a period of time that was at the Kennedy Center during this window needs to be quarantined for 14 days? If that occurs, then we'll be following the guidance of the health officials at that time. The incubation period, again, is at 14. Some people are saying it's as far as 21, depending on which officials you read or listen to. And what we're also seeing is it's under 2%. 2% of cases are children under 18. Doesn't mean they're not carriers. And so that's another, I know that's a concern amongst adults, is that potential. Again, we're following the guidance, and in these conversations, between now and the time those kids leave, I'll probably have 10 plus conversations with the health department about this very conversation. So we're not going to put them on a plane if we're giving guidance that they don't go. So live time decisions being made. With respect to the hybrid model, that's not an option in front of us. I respect the out-of-the-box thinking. But right now, what's in front of us from a rules perspective, and someone referenced, and forgive me, I'm forgetting who, the archaic structures and rules that we might have to live with and be grounded in. The private universities have different, completely different structures. To try to compare us to a private school or a private university or a private university calendar, it's completely different mental models. It's not even possible to do. I see the attorney shaking his head. That being said, I can't say home instruction for some, regular day for anyone who wants to come, because of it's either we're closed or we're open. And if we're closed for health-related reason, we can do digital home instruction. If we're closed because I'm afraid of a risk factor, but I don't have health official sign-off, we're closed. It's an emergency closing day. It doesn't count towards the 180, right? And so, like, there's a sort of this continuum of possibilities that could exist. On Friday, we spent time with the health officials working through a decision matrix with them about what it would look like. What happens if Princeton School District closes because one of the staff members or one of the parents has coronavirus? What would happen if that person had a spouse that worked in WWP or in Hamilton? What would that mean for, and you start playing through the what if scenarios, and until we're confronted with an actual scenario, we're not 100% going to be able to give you a black and white answer, and I'm not going to be able to create a scenario sheet, if this, then this. I can't come up with all the if-then statements on this one. With respect to the only district in Mercer County that I'm aware of that's closed for 2 days of preparation and cleaning is Trenton. And to compare our access and our preparation to the leadership or lack of in another community isn't even comparable. The reality is we don't need to close for 2 days because we're prepared with the technology skill sets of our staff members already, with the devices and the understanding of how to do that today. And in 1 day, we were able to put together 10 days of lessons for the entire school community ready to go by pulling a lot of smart people in the room and giving them a charge and then providing guidance and rules. So we didn't have to shut you down for a day and lose an emergency closing day. We wanted to preserve that. We found ways to bring people together after school, before school, to be able to communicate that message. We wanted to make sure that we communicated that message to our staff this morning before we sent out the public message at 9 o'clock this morning. That same message went to the teachers at 9, but it had already been disseminated by the principals and leaders at the emergency faculty meetings this morning. We looked at it from the perspective of not wasting a day, from the perspective of prep, because we felt our staff was already prepped. Now, in the meantime, we've done some targeted surveys to staff, and based on those results, we're giving targeted support for additional training in certain grade bands that have devices that entered the schools at different entry points and have been phased up. So there's a couple grade levels that we want to make sure that we have some targeted tech support, and that will happen over the next couple days. But by doing that and by surveying the staff, it also let us use our resources smartly, so that we didn't have to close down a school or a school system to give targeted professional development. We can go in on prep time, lunch times, and after school and make sure that those grade bands are taken care of. And I believe I hit the majority of questions. So thank you. I believe we have a lot of other things in the consent agenda still.
Thanks. So we'll move forward. At this time, we're going to get one committee report. That's the Finance Committee. So I'm going to turn that over to Louisa Ho.
Great, thanks. The Finance Committee met on February 25th, just prior to the February 25th board meeting. The committee reviewed the monthly financial reports as well as agenda items for the board meeting, which was that day. This included motions regarding fiber optic cable at CMS and a change order at Hvac. Also on the agenda were motions to dispose of equipment at the end of its life expectancy, information on some transportation bids, and an acknowledgement of bus evacuation drills for student walkers and non-bus riders who also need to know how to do that because they might be on a school bus for a field trip. Regarding the 2020-21 budget development, the committee reviewed the calendar for budget development. Stated numbers were expected to be released on February 27th, and we do have them now. The budget will be submitted to the county office after the March 10th board meeting. Construction update. Staff provided an update on the Hvac project. The administration and architect have met with the board attorney regarding next steps in the closeout and acceptance process, issues still requiring resolution of the cracks in the terrazzo tile in the hallways, transition heights from hallways into the rooms, and project delays. For Town Center, a temporary certificate of occupancy has been obtained and 2 classrooms are already being used. We also talked about work on the referendum projects. Since we just talked about those, I will not go over those details again. Staff also provided an update on the status of the energy savings improvement plan. Again, we've discussed those already tonight, so I'll skip the detail. Staff briefed the committee on some of the challenges of managing building use this summer with all these projects going on, so there will be some changes in the locations of summer programs for students this summer. Staff shared with the committee that the administration is looking at several approaches to staffing and managing custodial and maintenance services, and they presented their recommendation tonight. For cafeteria services, Sodexo, our vendor, has reached its financial guarantee to the district as of January. This is much better than in prior years. Staffing of food service positions continues to be a challenge. January 22nd was Reduced Utensil Waste Day, with many handheld food offerings. Middle school students have new lunch options, such as a mashed potato bar, Memphis barbecue sandwich, and turkey carnitas ball. High school students can create their own noodle bowls and can create tamales, empanadas, and enchiladas. I kind of want to try some of that out. Okay, for transportation, administration shared that through the Volkswagen settlement, a $15,000 grant is available towards the cost of a new bus. The district applied for the grant as one of our buses is coming to the end of its useful life. Transportation Coordinator Mary Pearson is visiting East Windsor to see a demonstration of an e-bus. Insurance, the district intends to go out to RFP for our liability insurance and our healthcare insurance professionals. For NJQSAC, which is New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum, monitors from the state will be in the district on February 27th to review the district's instruction and operations. Administration shared with the committee that district was notified that there is a delay in the award of the composter grant. Staff also shared that several weeks ago a meeting was held with the leadership of the booster clubs to begin a discussion of procedures for booster clubs. That's about it.
Are there any questions about the Finance Committee report? All right, that brings us to the voting portion of our agenda. We begin with administration items. I need a motion, please, on items 1 to 3, plus the blue addendum. Tony and Robin. Are there any questions or comments?
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Crew.
Yes.
Ms. McCune.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Ms. Zovich.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. Could I please get a motion on the curriculum items 1 to 3? Dana and Graylin. Any questions on the curriculum items?
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Crew.
Yes.
Ms. McCune.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Ms. Zovich.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. That brings us to the finance items. I'm going to ask you to please go over to item number 6, the professional services. There's a word that's missing, and we need to add that in. The last line should say at an amount not to exceed $90,000. Thank you, Graylin. Okay, so with the addition of that one word, can I please get a motion on the finance items 1 to 16, Louisa and Rachel? Are there any questions or comments about the finance items?
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Crew.
Yes.
Ms. McCune.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Ms. Zovich.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. May I please get a motion on the personnel items 1 and 2 plus the green addendum? Martin and Robin, are there any questions or comments about that?
We'll start with Ms. McCune.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Ms. Zovich.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Screw.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge some retirements that we just voted on. Kelly Bora, a teacher resource specialist at Hvac School, is retiring after 34 years with the district. Marianne Carnaval, a teacher resource specialist at Millstone River, is retiring after 35 years with the district. Cynthia Jenkins, a school nurse, is retiring after 35 years with the district. And Ellen Jinks, a teacher of life skills at Grover, is retiring after 33 years in the district. I took out my calculator, and those 4 teachers represent 137 years of work in WWP. So I want to thank them for everything that they did for our students and wish them all the best in their retirement. Can I please get a motion now to approve the minutes from February 11th and February 20th? Braylon and Dana? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any abstentions? Do we have any liaison reports? Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone. The WWP Education Foundation Board of Trustees met Thursday night, March 5th. Their next meeting is May 7th. Dr. Aberhold was also in attendance and provided the superintendent's report. The board reported the next Excellence in Education Grant Cycle runs from April 20th through May 22nd. They have made updates to their website. Subsequently, viewing on both their website and Facebook has increased significantly. They also commended Kia Bergman, Director of Communications, for doing a great job. Their youth committee meets weekly, is very involved, and currently busy planning the 4th annual Innovation Fair on May 16th. In fact, they just wrapped up running the auditions for WWP's Got Talent. I was very excited to hear all about the exhibits, activities, and demonstrations. So on behalf of the WWP Education Foundation, please mark your calendars for March 16th. Bring your whole family to the Innovation Fair at High School North. May 16th.
Thank you, Greg. Is there any new business? That brings us to our second opportunity for public comment. 15 minutes will be provided at the end of our meeting for public comment. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making the comment, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. All right, seeing as we have no public comment, we'll close that. Board needs to go back into executive session, so I have to read this resolution. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act authorizes boards of education to meet in executive session under certain circumstances, and whereas the Open Public Meetings Act requires the board to adopt a resolution at a public meeting to go into private session, now therefore be it resolved by the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District Board of Education that it is necessary to meet in executive closed session to discuss certain items involving personnel matters. Be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board, which need not remain confidential, will be made public as soon as feasible. The minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Be it further resolved that the board will not return to open session to conduct business at the conclusion of the executive session. So can I please get a motion to go into executive session? Tony and Rachel? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we're going to take a couple minutes and then we'll reconvene for our closed session. Thanks for coming out tonight.